What's the most unprofessional thing a doctor has ever said to you? I took my mom to see a neurologist as her PCP suspected she had Parkinson's. After waiting almost an hour, the neuro came into the room, took a look, told us she had Parkinson's, then told us to watch some YouTube videos describing what Parkinson's was, then left the room. The whole encounter was under a minute. When I was 21 I dislocated my shoulder and it continued to hurt for weeks. Went to a specialist, he suggested the pain was all in my head. After an MRI he realized I had a slap tear in my shoulder, so I said, "Looks like it's not all in my head," and he looked at me with such contempt, I never went back to that asshole. Went in because I had a UTI. I was in my 20s and well aware of what UTIs feel like and when I need treatment. The doctor gave me a long lecture about pill seeking and how the overuse of antibiotics creates superbugs. After I left, I got a call from the nurse, not the doctor, who sheepishly told me that my urine test came back positive for UTI and that they would send antibiotics to my pharmacy. After an appendectomy I had a follow-up. Instead of inspecting the incisions on the table like normal, he grabbed my hips and looked down my pants. He said, "Everything looks really good. Especially that bottom one," then winked at me. The bottom one is just above my genitals. Turns out the top two were infected. A doctor once examined me for a genital area irritation. He sent away samples for tests. While waiting a few days for the results to come back, he told me I had herpes. I had been with my wife 10 years at that point. Imagine the next few days where we go off on each other for giving the other one herpes. Imagine the strain that puts on a marriage with all the implications, accusations of being unfaithful, deceitful, etc. The anger, the hurt, the emotional damage, the betrayal. I had a bladder infection. It wasn't what was said, but I did have an appointment where the doctor just never showed up. I was in the examination room for about 45 minutes when an MA walked in and asked me what I was doing there. When I said I was waiting for the doctor already left. We're closing. Instead of calling the doctor back, they made me schedule another appointment. I found a new office instead. Pediatrician looked at our toddler, standing with a swayback, lordosis, posture, then without considering anything else turned to my wife and said, "She stands like that because you baby her too much." That was only our first clue that the doctor was a fucking moron. When I was 8 years old I was at the dentist for a cleaning. He mentioned that I had a frenulum under my tongue, which is a small, unneeded extra piece of tissue that attaches the tongue to the bottom of the mouth. He said that he could remove it, his reasoning being that my future girlfriends would appreciate it if I had a more mobile tongue. Grown-ups can't be autistic. You're not depressed, you don't look sad. You must just be tired. Here, take these sleeping pills, but don't take them all at once. During a consultation told me he refused to consider a surgery on the basis that he has the same condition and can exercise just fine. He then proceeded to actually tell me I didn't need to pursue physical wellness as I looked okay, especially compared to the average person from your town, you know, with a wink. "EK brew, you have me leave work to drive an hour to refuse to help me out and then insult my hometown." I disputed the $300 consultation bill on the premise that there was no service given and they dropped it. "You weren't sexually abused, that doesn't happen to boys. My mum had some symptoms that resulted in a scan of her brain. It sort of looked like she might have a tumor or water on the brain or something." When giving her the results the doctor said, "Maybe this is God's way of saying it's time." My mum, who was in her 50s at the time, went absolutely off on him. "God has nothing to do with this, etc." Turns out she was fine. Symptoms were related to something else, and the ambiguous scan results could have been machine or human error. Doctor told me if I wanted to pursue treatment and get a spot on the ward, I'd need to shave all my hair off. Worth noting that the treatment had nothing to do with my head lol. She had no bedside manner at all, was rude to the other medical professionals, etc. I told the nurse I was having doubts about agreeing to stay on the ward, but she convinced me to give it a try. First thing the doctor greets me with that first day was, "Hi, remember me? I'm that doctor you hate." What the hell kind of way is that to talk to someone sick and mentally distressed? I'd been having acute elbow pain for a while. The doc walks in and just goes, "You should cut out all dairy," without any sort of diagnosis. Then says to cut out all dairy products and lists milk, cheese and eggs. I told him eggs were not dairy. He insisted that they were. Wasn't a doctor but a nurse. While taking my history she asked if I was on any medication. I told her birth control and an antidepressant. She looked at me and said, "You're so young. What do you have to be depressed about?" I thought about it and realized I had nothing to be depressed about and was cured. Thanks random nurse. S. Not to me, but about me. I went to see the family doctor over a minor thing. I was an adult at the time, and didn't tell my parents because they freak out about anything medical related. My mother went to see him a few weeks later and he told her I'd been to see him. I was so fucking angry. I was looking for a surgeon for my gallstone operation and he asked what meds I was on. I mentioned my antidepressants and he started saying I didn't need to take them, I just needed to pray. I was pissed and replied, I guess I'll just pray my gallstones away too then. Needless to say, I went with a different surgeon. I had a doctor comment on how I've lost weight. Fine, I get that. But when I told him I started going to a gym, he told me not to try to build muscle because it will just turn to fat someday anyway. Flushed. A little back pain is normal. You should learn to live with it. Later, it's probably mental, and when I tried to kill myself, you're psychotic. 4 decades and numerous past mental examinations later, I was finally diagnosed. I had a slipped disc.